E allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia? Si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia? E allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia?
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buongiorno a tutti,
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stefano Gheno, and I'm the director of the Social Works Association, and I'm really glad to be here at this meeting whose title is extremely true and interesting, The Great Betrayal. So what do we mean by betrayal? Well, it is, and I'm talking as a 60-year-old, my generation has betrayed the following generations, leaving them in some kind of wasteland. But often we realize that the previous generations feel betrayed by the newer generations, as if they were not up to the task of carrying on our history. Well, I do believe that there is a shared responsibility, and I believe that this is a theme that is extremely interesting. So, well, as you can see, there are a lot of people here today, and this was one of the first meetings that was sold out, this meeting edition, because, and this shows how this theme is seen as pivotal. And we have some very distinguished guests today. And, well, I think they are friends for me, and I will introduce them. Maria Teresa Bellucci, who's Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Policies. She's already been here as a guest at the Rimini meeting. She is really involved in what we are trying to do here. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Then we have Silvio Cattarina, who's founder and president of the cooperative L'Imprevisto. He has devoted his life to education, and we are all psychologists, me, Silvio, and Mr. Bellucci, Mrs. Bellucci. So then we have Francesco Belletti, who is the director of the International Family Study Centers, CISF, and he writes for Famiglia Cristiana. He's a good friend of mine. We studied together and we worked together at the Cattolica University. He will help us understand what we're talking about. Don Elio Cesari, for many years, well, not so many, he's still very young, but he's been the director of the Salesian works in Sesto San Giovanni, and he is responsible of the youth Salesian group, and is now the national president of CNOS, National Salesian Work Center. And then, last but not least, Dario Odifreddi, president of Piazza dei Mestieri, which is a unique work center started in Turin. And, well, it actually puts together so many different elements in our works. And now it operates in Milan, in Catania, and we work together in order to understand what is happening in Italy and elsewhere in the world, in order to understand how we can reignite the flame that seems to have died out. So now I will ask Francesco to talk about what we are dealing with. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity, because this makes me, well, gives me the opportunity to talk about this reality with those who actually work on the field and are responsible to create public projects. And so this is a great opportunity for me. I'm really happy to be here. This morning at breakfast, on a small card that I had on my table, there was the following line: let's try to say a lot of things as saying just a few words. So I will just give you a few data, because, data seem to be more solid than our own considerations. But then it is difficult to convince people talking about percentages and figures. So we need to reason in terms of quality. I'm just trying to give you an overview of the situation. So these figures are connected with what we can do for the youngest generations, to understand how much the younger generations have suffered, and how there are many different elements that are shared by the young and adults. I'm talking about the hikikomori, that is to say the social withdrawal. That is a phenomenon that has been already dealt with here, for instance, here during a meeting on this theme. And the latest data of 2022 show that in high school, 1.7% of students is experiencing hikikomori, social withdrawal. They do not leave their room, not even to go and eat. So, the only window they have on the world is their PC or their telephone. 1.7%, that means 44,000 people. Is that a high figure? Well, it's one person out of 200. So it's one student out of two classes, school classes. And they are afraid of the world. 2.6% are at risk of hikikomori. So these are elements that are particularly stressed with reference to the pandemic, which caused this situation. We have a very strong suffering impact, psychological impact on the younger generation, especially on the younger generations, who have suffered more than adults. Another example, other figures, 49.4% of young people in 2022, between 18 and 25 years of age, have suffered of anxiety and depression after the pandemic. That means then, if we put the two figures together, one young person out of two. So these are real situations. Anxiety, depression call for attention, for treatment. Someone has to take into account the situation. A survey in 2023, 71% of students say that they are in a difficult situation, but only 31% of parents do realize that their children are living in a situation of unhappiness. So we do know that it is very complicated to be a parent, and there is no scientific guide for that. 39% of the cases, parents say that the responsibility lies with the school, and 37% of the cases, the teachers say that the responsibility lies with the parents, the family. So this is another great wound in our society. There is no longer an alliance between families and schools, and at the end, the real victims are the students, the young people, minors. So if a child gets a bad mark or a suspension at school, the family normally goes against this decision. So this shows that there is a real deep wound for our children. We need an alliance from the educational point of view. Another couple of figures. In 2022, 11-year-olds that were victims of bullying were 11.9% for boys, 19% for girls, about 100,000 young children. So sometimes these are, in a way, situations that follow a certain trend, and your peer group, in a way, can be a group of people that are particularly difficult to live with. But today we know that we cannot neglect this situation where one child out of 5 in middle school are victims of bullying or cyberbullying. So these are figures that clearly tell us that there is a suffering, a widespread suffering that we cannot neglect. And then I'll give you another figure. It's the last one. We have the data of the Ministry of Grace and Justice for minors that are taken care of by social service offices. 18,000 people are taken care of by the judiciary system. 4,000 are youths that are now of age. So they started to be taken care of by these services when they were minors, but they have now become of age. So 15,000 doesn't seem to be a very high figure if you think that there are about 400,000 babies born every year. So it doesn't seem to be a high number. But if we put all these figures together, we have to realize that behind each every single figure that I have mentioned, there is the story of a child, of a young person. We have to ask ourselves, how can we involve them in active citizenship, in a new form of well-being? So, well, these data show that we need to talk about this phenomenon. There is a real problem. We cannot deny that. And it is an educational problem. As Stefano was saying, the educational issue is extremely sensitive, and it is, in a way, an element that makes the situation even more difficult, and it concerns the future of every one of us. The creation of the identity of an adult is very, very risky for the human species and calls for commitment on the part of the parents, of the family, as well as for the entire community. The human species is the one that takes longer to make their young ones autonomous, independent, whereas, well, in nature, the young ones are independent after a few days from their birth. In the past, children became autonomous at around 4 or 5 years of age. Now, well, maybe 25 years, 30 years, even 40 years. So we need to start a new cultural process to build new adult identity, a process of care that asks people to invest in their children. A young couple that has a baby today has to foresee 25 years of care. To have children, to create a family today means that you have to be there for 25 years. And this shows how critical the situation is. So the educational adventure, so to speak, has always been a criterion to judge subsidiarity, to judge the capacity on the part of the society to work together with the family. In my home, I can do what I want, but as a parent, I'm at the front line, and I have the right and the duty to be the first to educate my children. But I also have the right to have a society that helps me educate my children. So it has to be done in a synergy. So that's what I mean by subsidiarity. Society should not take away their educational responsibility from families. It should support families in carrying out these duties, this task. So here there is another important wound, apart from the gap between the two worlds, where families are looking for those responsible outside the family. There is also the need to think that society needs parents, and parents need society to educate, to raise their children. And then, this is a theme that will be touched upon also by other speakers, but the whole process is actually focused on the child himself. So this is obviously influenced by the society, by the family, by the parents, but then there is the child as the main actor. So it is difficult to carry out these educational process. In the past, children were taught how to behave in society, and they just had to obey. Now we tend to favor the freedom of choice of people. So in a way, this freedom seems to be an obstacle to self-realization. So we need to find a balance between you have the fact that you have to let children develop and grow, but at the same time you have to outline some duties. Otherwise, there will be problems when these children are adults. So nowadays we have a model, that is to say, a family that tries to cancel all the obstacles that their children might encounter. So this is a cultural horizon that involves adults as well. So society and family sometimes do not help our children. The family is creating a culture where there are no real relationships, good links, and society thinks to be able to live without these family ties. So these ties are not as a safety rope. It is something that actually limits your you feel that you are less free if you feel that you have these ties. You think that you'll be happy if you will be completely free. So there's no longer this idea that if you have to do something and succeed, you need to be working with someone else and not on your own. So this is what is asked to families today, to invest in positive ties, creating limits, creating responsibilities for the children, helping them to build relationships. Society creates models that are based on success. Either you are successful and then you have some value, otherwise you don't have any value. So it's a contest every day. There is just one winner, and this is a tragedy, actually. And society gives a very difficult message to young people, because the young people think they will be judged, and families cannot help their children in facing this. So what do our children need, and I'm approaching the end of my intervention, they need targeted policies, cooperation between the school and labor market, but they need hope, trust, and responsibility. Young people need to be looked at. They need to be part of relationships that are solid, trustworthy. They have the right to make mistakes. And I quote Pierpaolo Donati, social relationships are like the light. We don't see the light, but we see thanks to the light. Without light, we don't see anything. So the same is true for relationships. They are immaterial, but they make us see the others and the world. We see through relationships. If we want to look at our children today, we have to build a relationship to them. Thank you. Thank you, Francesco. But it is clear that this is not an abstract analysis of the situation. There is a passion that is clear in this intervention, the worries of a father that wants to propose a challenge. Silvio, many years ago, you faced this challenge. Can you explain why there is such a big need for education today? The greatest problem is that we do not know, we do not listen, we do not understand our heart, the great desire of which it is made. So the problem is that we're not able to know our heart, and that this is the most painful drama for a young person. For young people, the most unbearable difficulty is not understanding what their heart asks and wants. That is to say, not having adults and friends that help him discover, understand their heart. Young person only understands the greatness of his heart only if he is called by an adult who has already discovered his own heart, and finding this a fascinating adventure calls upon him to live the same adventure of life. This is the great betrayal, to have a heart that has everything, that has infinity inside, but not having any help to live this heart. The loneliness of which so many young people speak is exactly this. No one tell young people that their heart is big, that is well made. No one tells them that everything that their heart awaits, wants is there, does exist, and has always been prepared, has been there forever, and it will be there forever. No one tells them that life will never be defeated, that God will never fail them, that God will never betray himself. Or, in a simple way, we can say no one tells them that life does not end, that the world is not going to collapse, that death will not win, that the COVID will end and wars will cease. No one tells them that there are three great things, three great dimensions, conditions, three great events. The value of my person, the reality, the value of reality, of life, and the reason why we are alive in this world. I often stop a young person in our communities and I ask them, answer this question: what do you think the greatest, the most beautiful and most precious thing is in the universe? Well, no one say, I am that thing, me. And we adults should give this kind of answer. Or when I ask, what is the second most beautiful thing that there is in the world, in the universe? That is life, reality. And I say life, reality suck. And there is no end and no beginning. There is nothing worthwhile. And I say this is not how it works. You wouldn't be here otherwise. You wouldn't love yourself, you wouldn't love your parents, you wouldn't love your girlfriend. Reality is full of gifts, of grace. There are so many helps, so many helpful hands. Reality in itself has a presence. Our priests, when I was a child, said reality has a face. We need to meet this face, and this face has to see us. To wake up in the morning, to go to work, to create a family, you need to be faced by something big. And good is always bigger than evil. Whereas young people think that evil wins, that it has already won, actually, and that life is not beautiful. Reality is not beautiful. And then there is another aspect we work at with young people. There needs to be a reason why we are alive, why we are in the world. I've changed, and my work has changed. Everything has changed. What is unexpected has changed, and young people have seen a new way, a different, more interesting possibility. I changed when I discovered that and I'm talking about myself, not my youth, I'm the poorest and the neediest. I need of life, of love, of happiness. So, well, my youth always tell me how much you love us, Silvio. They say that to me and to my friends. And I say, no, you are not the ones I love the most. I want to love life more. I want to be able to love God more. And then I know that I will find a way to love you as well. I want to be the first one that starts to love God. And if God comes first, or any of you does, well, I'll get really angry. Obviously, I say that smiling. The betrayal of many adults is when they bind children to themselves, to their own person. And I say to the youth, don't look at me, look where I look. It's much more interesting, much more empowering. It would be probably more comfortable for you to think that I am capable and you are not. But that would be a great injustice. What you lack to live is what I have. That would be a great injustice. So what I say is, if I can be important to you, I would like to be important for my cry, the cry of my need for life, how I cry out for God, reality, friends. The person is this cry. You are this cry. A cry for everything that I want to be offered to me, given as a gift. Otherwise, life is just a question of performance. I don't want that the things I do are just the skills of my hands, because otherwise it would be something small, because I am small. I want a lot. I want everything, but this everything, this that I want, can only be given to me, offered to me. The great need of the young and of adults as well, but for the young people this is more evident, is life. But life is not a matter of performance, nor of luck or misfortune, even though young people would use other words here. Life is asked for, is begged, is prayed for. All words that we are ashamed to utter because they belong to a certain culture. Thank you.
Come sempre.
As usual, Silvio tells us about this great passion, which is a passion for man. Because of what he met in his life. Father Elio, you've been an educator for many years, and you have had the opportunity to focus on this topic from many perspectives. You were the director of a young pastoral. Now you have a more organizing role, which is equally challenging. So what does it mean from your perspective to educate in a fragility world like this one we have today? Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here. The fact that we're talking about education with a full room, we are focusing on the essential of life, because the risk is that we don't find the time and space to talk about these things. We all realize about these problems. We all know that these problems are very demanding. The risk of not talking about them or not focusing on them correctly is very high. I'll be very short, and I'll talk to you about my beliefs concerning this challenge, which is impossible, because we have to accept that this is educating is an impossible challenge. And we try to educate. As already said, education should be the responsibility for someone who is much better than us, and we should remember that. And this is Father Bosco's thought. Now, my first belief is that we have to stay with the youth, to live with the youth, and we have to be happy with that, which cannot be taken for granted. We have to stay with them and live with them, especially the most fragile ones, the ones that actually you wouldn't like to have in your classroom in the morning. So you get in class in the morning, you call out the names, and you hope that that guy is sick or maybe is late. We should stick to those ones especially. You must have an interest in them. And you don't have to think that if they're there or if they're not there, it's the same thing. I mean, the youth, my classroom, my students, no, you have to stick to that person, to that young person, especially with a name and a surname. It is right to talk about the youth, but it's better to talk with them, even better if they speak, if they're the ones that speak. My second belief is that all the youth, all of them, even the worst ones, the first gift that we can give them is to make them protagonists of education and not just beneficiaries of education. Because I am convinced that we do a lot for them, but we do very little with them. And Father Bosco was a master on that. One of the most beautiful things of the meeting is to see young volunteers creating something, making the meeting. And then we have the guests, the speakers, and so on and so forth. But the most beautiful thing is the face of the youth who are protagonists of the meeting. And they're not just there at the back. Sitting without doing something. They are the protagonists of their own education. Each teenager strongly wants to meet an adult telling them, "Can you help me? Can you help me?" Now, when that is the case, when there's an adult telling a young person, maybe the most disgraceful one, "Can you help me?" in that, then that adult can change that young person's life. A few days ago, I asked a guy that we had in school if I could tell a story of his life at the meeting. And I asked him, just to give him the possibility to speak, "Can you please write to me what we have done as a Silesians for your life that has helped you in your life?" And since his life is quite interesting, I asked him. And the first thing he told me was, "Nice, wonderful. That's good. You're asking me to tell you about my life, and you're going to tell my life to other people. Well, if you let me, I will." And so I read that writing. Well, he made a few mistakes. There were very few mistakes because he was very good, because he studied without the Silesians, and the Silesian is a brand. Okay, and I'm going to read it to you. And this is a wonderful text written by him. My name is Valerie. I am a young boy with like many others, but I had a deviation in my life. In 2020, I was arrested. I was taken to Turin, and I was in jail for almost 1 week, and then I went to the Lycairos community. It was a brand new world for me. And I was so angry with myself that I couldn't think clearly after what had happened. On that day, the 7th of March, 2020, it was the day when I fell down. In the community, I met Father Claudio Burgio. He welcomed me, and with him, my life has continued to go on, and it didn't end. He helped me with other educators to go over my difficulties, and with them, I learned to trust adults. Trust adults. With him, I continued to study in my schools, the Silesians at Sesto San Giovanni. Before being arrested, I had already started my school there, and I wanted to finish school, but only in that school. My community got in contact with my school, and after a lot of red tape, the director didn't want to take him in school. No, actually, it did. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken him in school. To better understand the best way to go back, I went back to the Silesians. Those were difficult years because I lived with the difficulties I had outside the school. For example, psycho drugs, which I had to take to sleep at night. And for me, it was complicated to stay awake in school. But through the patience of my teachers, and since they also loved me, there was a certain affection. Step by step, together with my professors, my teachers, I studied and I managed to go through A-levels. So that means that if we make mistakes, or if we do something wrong, there's always going to be someone looking at you with different eyes and not through your mistakes. The Silesians saw a young boy that was going through problems in his life, and they believed in me so that I could rise back again. The Silesians gave rebirth to me. My experience can only show that trusting adults and being helped by them is not a sign of weakness. And with all the professors that accompanied me to A-levels, I was strong enough to be reborn. So my third belief comes from this text. I was struck by the rebirth. He mentioned twice the rebirth. I was reborn through the affection that he felt. Father Bosco said, it's not enough to love young people. It is necessary for them to know to be loved. If they don't understand that they are being loved, their hearts will not be touched. Thank you. Thank you, Father Elio. We forgive the fact that Father Bosco has your badge because we're all Silesians. And now let's give the floor to Dario Odifreddi, which is the most Silesians of all. And I'm going to ask him a very interesting question. Today, we often hear that the relation between man and work is a different relation. To Father Bosco, that was essential. Good Christians, honest citizens, which means learning a job. So, is work still useful today to educate the youth? Hello, everyone. We're so convinced that work is needed to educate people that Piazza dei Mestieri, which now turns 20 this year, is based on this challenge, putting together work and education. This has always been true. As for Father Bosco, the first contract of apprenticeship that I had with him is still in my office hanging on the wall. So we're all Silesians. I'll give you the experience of my youth. I'm not going to talk about the importance of education and work. What can work educate on? Well, first, it educates on freedom. Piazza dei Mestieri has different training and educational activities. So there is communication, graphic designs, food, cooking school. There are different jobs. For each one of these jobs, we have launched an activity. So there's a restaurant, a pub, a communication agency. We're producing bread, beer, because we wanted to have something practical. We wanted to provide them a practical opportunity to work during their training so that they could grow personally. I'm going to read to you a sentence said by Thomas, a young boy. He was a baker. He was lucky enough because he had a master. He was a baker who had closed his shop and had decided to convey his passion to the youth, Thomas included. Thomas once told Cristiana, which is the co-founder of Piazza dei Mestieri, Well, I understood, looking at my professor, that making bread is like growing a child until he becomes a man. You can use the dough. You use the dough, you cure it, the bread matures and becomes a food. I am before the bread just like before a person, and I feel free. And Thomas said, in a very simple way, something that many things have said, and I think about Monnier in 1932, working means growing a man. And the Pope said, through work, a man does not only transform a nature, but becomes a man. To some extent, he becomes a more man. And Father Giussani said, work is like the most practical, the hardest and the most practical love towards God. But why? Because work is the expression of human personality, of the relation between man and God. So the first thing is educational freedom. The second importance of work is that it is very practical. As in, you have to learn that the methodology is imposed by an object. So there are people, young people, working in the bars who are accompanied by tutors to serve at the restaurant. There was one of our partners, one of the sponsors came by, and they organized their dinner. They basically speak French, and there's these two young people who went there with their dishes, and these people sitting at the table, je préfère que tu me donnes, they were speaking French, and they didn't know what to do. They took these dishes, they went back to the kitchen, they went to the chef, and they said, hey, chef, we cut a poor figure, but when can we learn languages? So you can talk a lot about the importance of speaking languages, but this is totally useless. But at that time, at the practical time, they found out that they were lacking, and they were asking for help. They wanted to learn foreign languages. The third thing is that work challenges our talents. We try to meet the needs of all our youth, so if they have a passion, we try to nurture this passion. I'm going to tell you about this young boy, Dennis. Dennis attended a course of Barbary, but he has a passion for music. So once he came here to the meeting, and he said, he told the Christiana, I want to open a big barber shop, but with a piano. And he continued with his passion for music. At some point, at the end of his third year of school, he went to friends, a talent, a very major Italian talent. He got to the final. He ranked third. So the dream of his life came true. And at some point, things started not to go very well because it's not very easy. You have a moment of glory, but then it's difficult to continue. And he realized he changed his name. He was no longer called Dennis, but Daddy. It was cooler. And then he came back and said, well, I'm thinking about my past. No, I'm going to go back to Dennis as a name. And because I'm not that, I mean, I want to change. I want to go back to who I was before. So, performance is something good. Man is done for performance because heart, intelligence, creativity, passion are the continuous search. When Thomas makes bread, he makes a performance. And I'm saying that because sometimes it is forgotten. I mean, we have to challenge these youth to nurture their talents, and that is the performance. The problem is that you are not defined by your own performance. But how can you realize that you are not defined by the fact that you've gone till the end? Because, you cannot be defended from what is happening around you. Otherwise, you will not be educated. So work is essential to build up an identity. Hence, the debate on the income given to unemployed people is a very dangerous debate. We don't have to replace the idea that this income given to the unemployed can replace work, because work is part and parcel of people, of the person. So in today's world, in the Western world, where there are crises, wars, and so on and so forth, the youth are the main challenge. So either the youth take the reins of this challenge and take on this challenge under this in this difficult context where everything is changing very rapidly, but they have to become protagonists. Please, adults, we have to stop pitying them. That would be the worst thing that we could do. Thank you. Thank you, Dario Odifreddi. I want to thank you personally for talking about the difference between work and income, which is not often, not too much discussed. I would like to have a bill abolishing the term labor market, because labor work is a totally different thing. It's the structure of man. Man is the image of God, which is a worker on a permanent basis. But then there is volunteering. In any case, Dario. As you already said in your speech, how can we ignite this fire? There is clearly a change on the way. There are some structural elements at a time of change, radical change. How can we ignite this fire today? Well, the first thing we have to be sure about is that this fire can be always reignited. Because this is the way we are, because each one of us is this way, because this applies to every age. It is the same everywhere in the world. So a fire can always be ignited in every one of us. But we have to understand the world we're living in. Otherwise, we adults can have no relations with the youth. This year, I was talking to some people attending the Piazza dei Mestieri in Turin and Catania, two Italian cities, and they are very afraid of disappointing us, disappointing themselves and disappointing the people they love. And this stopped them in taking action. And there were many people who told me that they were afraid of disappointing their grandparents. The first time I burst into a laugh, and the third time I thought, this is strange. And then I wondered something. Well, what about parents? Maybe the parents are missing. 8 out of 32 said that they were afraid of disappointing their grandparents, and that was something new to me. As if there were no fathers and mothers. So, they are afraid, and what can we do? We have to be naked before them. And as Cattarina said, we have to be there to help them in their own destiny. We need to realize that there is a problem of understanding one another, even in terms of language. I have a friend of mine called Daniel Zuccaro. He wrote a book, Ero un bullo, I was a bully. And at some point, he looked at his audience, very old people, and said, "But we don't care anything about what you're saying." And he was very blunt. Because the problem is not what you're saying. Naked, we have to sit before them naked and with a lot of patience. Because the great challenge, the second great challenge, is to be able to wait for change, which maybe will never happen, but we need to be patient. There's another friend of mine called Paola Gibelli. She's a teacher. She's a backup teacher. She wrote a book. She's dealing with autist youth. And she wrote a book called La scuola è qualcuno che ti aspetta. The school is someone waiting for you. So education is someone waiting for you. And we have a lot of examples. There's a girl with a difficult life, Angelina. She attended the Piazza dei Mestieri, that vocational training school. And then at some point, she came with a pram, and she said, "Okay." Do you recognize me? It's me. Can you remember me? But why have you come here? Because I've just come out of hospital, and I wanted my child, first thing first, would see the first beautiful thing that I have seen in my life. This is just to make you understand that it is important to wait. I have too many examples. I cannot do them all because there's no time. To conclude, you have already heard that from me, and this is always what I'm saying during my conclusions. And I'm going to read to you a poem written by one of our girls, because I think that in this poem you can see what it means to reignite a fire. In order to reignite a fire, the fire has to be reignited in you, and you have to love people, because the essential, which is the title of the meeting, is not just to give up what is not needed, the superfluous, but to search for the relation with God. The poem is called The Loneliness, and it goes like this. Loneliness, a light companion of everyone that is in your mind and that empties your soul. You are not the winner. You are no longer the queen. Someone can defeat you with the embrace of the good, can kill you. And that was a 16-year-old girl. My life is no longer bad. My future is no longer sad. Only my souvenir is bitter, but my past is forgotten and will be renewed. Valentina. Thank you.
Thank you. Father Candriar, a couple of days ago, on speaking about the title of the meeting, said that we shouldn't be talking, well, we should be talking of what is the essence, not what is essential. And I think that what this poem actually spoke about this. Father Elio, up to you now. Once again, I ask for help to our young people, because they are our greatest treasure. A student is Egyptian, didn't speak Italian when he arrived, and now has been called at the Chamber of Labor to speak about his experience in our community, because one of the fires we have to ignite, and then I think that Dr. Bellucci will agree with this, is to promote and sustain professional training everywhere in Italy, from the north to the south, in all Italian regions, because this story that I'm going to read out would not have been possible without professional training that really helped many young people to develop their skills, their talents. So we have to do everything possible to offer this opportunity to everyone. My name is Mina. I'm 18 years old. I'm in Italy. I've been in Italy for about 3 years. I come from Egypt. I was 14, and I underline 14, when for the first time I left my village to go and work in Alexandria, and then to Cairo. And then I went back with some friends to Alexandria in order to take a boat to Italy because I wanted to study. When we got there, we spent 3 days on a shelter on the beach to wait for the boats because we had to be hidden from the police. On the 16th, I boarded a boat. I had to swim to the boat. It was a horrible day. The people driving the boat were speaking with a foul language. Everybody in the government said that the only important thing was the safety of the country, and if we died, it was no problem for anyone. Then I waited 4 days at sea for other groups of people who wanted to go to Italy, to sail to Italy like me. Then we traveled through the Mediterranean for 16 days, and we arrived in Trapani. I was sick during the trip. I had a stomachache. We didn't eat much, and I was seeing that around me there were so many bad people. Those who complained were thrown into the scene. I was sent to Marsala in a community for unaccompanied minors. I spent a month there. It was boring. There was a gym, yes, and a swimming pool as well, but I was really bored because I wanted to study. The only thing I did was going cycling. Thanks to a Tunisian friend that gave me his document, I could buy a bus ticket to Milan. I was welcomed to a camp for migrants, and then in Casa della Carità. And I started to attend the Don Bosco School of the Salesian, and I could have my life back as a young person. I learned Italian, and I am now starting to become an industrial mechanic. And I now live with a family, with a lot of commitment, and with a lot of work. Now I am happy. So I don't think there is nothing else to add. That's it. Thank you. Silvio, before asking Maria Teresa Bellucci to, in a way, draw the conclusion of this meeting, just give us some more ideas to ask a lot to young people. Otherwise, we do not believe in them. We don't believe in life. We do not trust young people. Schools, for instance, and this is in a way a generalization, asks less and less to students, so that students probably say, my professors, the adults that have to do with me, do not believe in me. They don't believe in themselves as well. So we have to ask a lot, to ask for everything. Let's think about the young people in my community without cell phones, without music, without going out, without all the communication devices that everyone has, without girlfriends and without their parents. And we need to be more to be clearer in a way of how we express our rules, better clothing, better behavior. We cannot look at this neglected way of living and also the buildings that host a school with dirty walls, with rundown classrooms. We have to ask for a lot, also for those who are suffering or have suffered. Otherwise, what is the meaning of suffering and pain? I have suffered a lot in my life, a young person might say, and now you are asking just a little from me. And it cannot be that I have suffered that much and that life has put me to the test without a reason, without a meaning, without a goal. I often say to my young people, if I were you, after so much suffering, I discovered that it's no use to anyone or anything, I would really get angry, and I would start smashing everything around me. You who have suffered, you who can neither read nor write, you who are born in the wrong country with the wrong parents, you can ask for more. You can cry out for life, for God, asking that He fills you with gifts, with the skills, hope, strength, courage. Sooner or later, you will also have to ask yourself the question of motivation, educational skills, and the sustainability of adults that work with young people. It can no longer be enough that one can teach to be with young people through just because you pass an exam. Not everyone is capable or suitable to be with young people. Being with young people is not a matter of a technique. It's not a professional skill. It's not an algorithm, or it's not a matter of artificial intelligence. Being with young people is an encounter, an event, a human capacity, a relational skill. It's wisdom, it's involvement, it's affection, and it's compromise, and it's sacrifice. If we want to understand, if we want to give ourselves to be fruitful, this is a great sacrifice. We need to have great gifts and skills. We must have an idea of life and death, an idea of good and evil, of right and wrong, an idea of the world and of history. We need to know, to have seen and experienced that it is possible to change, to start over, to begin again. It is. Young people think that in given situations there is no possibility of change, and they think nothing can be really changed. So this is a new paganism, so to speak. But change is possible. It is possible to love each other, to help each other. When young people come to our community, they say, I am alone, alone against the world. I have to fend for myself. And another important point is that we need to say that, to stop saying that young people are fragile. So this word, fragile, is always given too much importance. Family today is fragile, and in order to be able to cope with what is needed to respond to all the needs of young people, we must stop thinking in categories that end up becoming an alibi for non-commitment, not committing, for not tackling problems. We always talk about these millennials, digital natives, deviants, drug addicts, social outcasts. These are people, abandoned, lonely, neglected young people. Nobody told them why they are in the world, what is the meaning of pain, of misfortune. Their real condition is not knowing how to tackle certain situation. They don't know why they live and for whom they live. So this is not fragility. The point is not the evil. It's not the defeat, the loss, the limit or failure. A greater pain is not knowing good, not knowing love. That is to say, not knowing how to love.
Grazie.
Thank you. And thank you to Silvio. Okay, now there should also be a question for Deputy Minister Bellucci. Actually, as I know her quite well, I'm always struck by Maria Teresa, not just because she's extremely able to make proposals, but also because she likes listening and she's very capable of listening. So, you've listened to all that. What conclusions can we draw? Well, first of all, thank you. It is nice, and I'm happy to be here this year once again. Thank you very much to the meeting of Rimini. Thank you very much to you for inviting me. And thanks to all of you, because there's many of you in the room today. Let me thank my family, my husband, my daughter, who are there in the first row. And this year they came with me. Last year I was here on my own. They were on holiday. And these are the very few days that we have to stay together the whole day. And this year I was very sad to leave them. And the fact that they wanted to be with me and to come with me made me very happy. Because the family is my starting point every day and my arrival every night. Sometimes I go home very late at night, and I wouldn't like to. Sometimes I don't have enough time, but this is a certainty in my life. In the morning, I wake up, and there's my husband, my daughter, my cat and dog, and at the night when I go back, they're there to wait for me. Because the title of this session today says that if we're not after the essential, then what are we after? And I immediately thought about Saint-Exupéry's sentences in The Little Prince. And these are the same words that my daughter wrote to me on the fridge with, she was writing with a white pencil on a blackboard. And she wrote, the essential is invisible to the eyes. You can only see very well with the eyes. So when talking about education, and today you talked about many different things and topics and principles and values. But when talking about education, the first question I'm asking myself is, educating to what? On what? You also mentioned freedom. Being free from what or for what? And then politics. What is politics needed for? And what does it pay service to? So educating is important, but it is also fundamental to understand on what we have to educate. Father Giussani used to say that the main thing of educating and real education is educating the heart of man. Mazzini said that educating is the bread of the soul. Educating means relating ourselves with others, means meeting the others, hoping to love them and to love ourselves. And this is the highest meaning of education. Then we can do that in many different ways, but the essential thing is the care, taking care of others and of ourselves. Being free from what and for what. Even in that case, for a long time, politics was talking about freedom without the principles, rights, and duties. Free to do anything, regardless of what that can do to others. Free to be addicted, free to stay on a smartphone, free to follow my desires up to the end, regardless of the concept of love. I'll be very clear, as usual. This is not my concept of freedom. I've never thought that the liberalization of cannabis was a way to provide the freedom to freedom. Freedom is a different thing. Freedom means being dependent on one thing, which is loving someone. We can all be dependent, and we have all to be dependent on love, on loving someone. This makes us free. So the concept of freedom means freedom for someone which is beyond me, which is higher than me and pushes me to be better, although I will never manage to get till the end. And my family makes exactly that. I'm not a deputy minister with them. Tomorrow, in the future, this is not going to be the essential. My family makes me go back to the human and to humanity. And what does it have to do with politics? Well, quite a lot. It has to do with my own vision of politics and social policies and the vision of today's government. Because in providing freedom, which is connected to the idea of being able to do anything, another topic related to social policies is that the idea that the state can think about you, for you, and on you. If you are a person, a family, an educator, or anything else in life. And we've seen that always. Today, someone was making an example of speakers, the income for the free income for the unemployed. So this is a state of thinking of you. So you're fragile, so I'm giving you money. So you're not entitled to a work. It's the state of thinking for you. But this is not the only thing. The methadone, the state is thinking for you. You cannot live your emotions. Methadone, psycho drugs. So an alternative to therapeutic communities, because that makes you free. And then there's another example too. Social benefits. Whereas not enough is done for work policies, labor policies. If you are unemployed, then there are social benefits. This is, again, the state thinking of you. What does that mean? That means becoming dependent not on love, but on someone tying up your hands and chaining you, making you think that you cannot live without a state. And little by little, you stop thinking. You switch off your brain. You use that little money to become a consumer of methadone, of psycho drugs, of products, of the internet, of internet connection. And internet connections, which have nothing to do with the human, and whereby you're pretending to be human. Artificial intelligence is speaking like us. Logos is what makes the difference between man and any other human being. It is done in a very wise way because it makes us believe that on the other side there is nothing human. Well, actually there is nothing human because there is no heart, there is no love, there is no tenderness. And that can make us dependent. So, what are the social policies I believe in? Those supporting freedom, which is to the service of others, to make him free to think, to believe in themselves, to make their own decisions, to make a family, to have children, free to build their own existence. This is why we have tried to change the paradigm, to turn it upside down with the reform of the income for the free income for the unemployed, with different forms of support to work. That means involving, that means focusing and turning the paradigm upside down. It's not easy, and a lot of time is required, because for a long time people thought that the state could think for themselves and on them. Social policies have to provide opportunities. This is a time of great change. Just like the time of the Industrial Revolution, but it is more complex. We are undergoing a technological revolution which has an impact not just in terms of innovation, but also in terms of social and human relations. Everything is changing. The Industrial Revolution, from the countryside, people were going to factories, and everything changed. Today, from the real world, we are entering the real world, and everything is changing. So, this revolution has to be managed, governed. We have to control the change of technological revolution, and we have to govern this revolution for it to become a renaissance of the humans. So the state does not have to replace man, but has to provide opportunities. It has to be there, especially where men have given up and have said, okay, we cannot do anything there. We've seen that in Scaivano, in Scampia, in Tor della Monaca, in Milan. The state has given up there because there is organized crime, saying that there's a part of the population for which there's nothing to do. For the first time, we've allocated 250 million euro to open up youth communities and to support them. Because if the state has given up, there's a parish, or maybe there's a third sector organization, or there are people who thought that the meaning of their life was taking care of someone else. And they've done that despite the state, without the state. So a fair state, a good state, doesn't think that there needs to be more state than society. And we don't need to have more society without a state or with less state. This logic just creates victims. We need to have a more state with more societies. We need to have an alliance where together we can be free, and each one has to take its own responsibilities. In democracy, if there's a state and a government that has been chosen by the people, then it must be responsible to make decisions and to take on responsibilities to make decisions. But together, there is a sense of responsibility that has to involve everyone. Last year, I visited your stands, and I visited one At the entrance, there was a sentence I was struck by, and it said, "No one is enough for themselves." We were talking about a free port. No one is enough for themselves. I'm not enough for myself. I need my family. But that also concerns the state. The state is not enough for itself. But not even third sector entities are enough for themselves. This is not a competitive logic. It's not that it's a fight, it's a battle for being better than others. It's the sense of community where we have to work together. We are educated by experiences and by our meetings. Love and meetings are what make the difference in our life. To come here, I went through Matelica. I didn't know Matelica. I didn't know what it was. And I was going around the streets in Matelica. My mother came from that region. I wanted to bring my child to see the Francesco caves. And I saw that there was the house for Enrico Matte's house. We didn't talk a lot about him in the past few years. He died when he was 55. He made extraordinary things. But he is forgotten. Mattei said, or used to say, that there is no community without a job, without work. There is no work without companies. There is no company without energy. So, these are important words. Mattei served his country with love. He was transparent. He had a very simple interest, clear, and he had a sense of community, a community based on work, based on labor, because labor makes people free, because labor makes our identity. I am a psychologist, I'm a psychotherapist, but I'm a volunteer, because when talking about education and when educating our soul, volunteering is a bread for soul. So the government tries to play its own role with the social policies, making people free, whereby free help is not given. We want to abandon that. And we want to bet on the human and on the ability of the humans to learn and to improve. Within a community, it is not easy. You were saying that it is impossible, but what is impossible can find a solution. It's enough to start working on that. Then what is impossible becomes a possible. It depends on each one of us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your conclusions. I don't want to add anything else. Much has already been said. Just let me say something. The meeting is a place where it is possible to meet people, to start doing something, as said by Deputy Minister Bellucci. So let me ask each one of you to think about the possibility to contribute to the meeting. You have seen that there are the Dona Ora stations around. Just stop there for a minute. During this week, we were all struck by what Cardinal Pizzaballa told us during the introductory session. The people organizing this meeting have decided that some money that is going to be collected at the meeting is going to be allocated to the Patriarchate so that we can help in the terrible situation that the people in the Holy Land are living. I want to insist on that because I want to be very clear. The only possible way to contribute now is money. There is no other opportunity. You cannot help those people in any other way in that conflict. So don't forget that when you walk beside the Dona Ora desks. Each one of us can be a protagonist. Thank you very much to all of you. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite